What if the most emotional war stories weren't filmed on battlefields but painted in ink and light? Animated war movies prove that hand-drawn tears and digital skies can carry more truth than any explosion ever could. They turn conflict into poetry, loss into memory, and silence into something that speaks louder than words. From Japan's haunting skies to a girl's quiet rebellion in Iran, these are the 10 animated war films that hit harder than live action ever dared. Number 10. Unicorn Wars, 2022. Imagine teddy bears at boot camp. Cute, right? Not in Unicorn Wars. This Spanish dark fantasy turns sugary childhood nostalgia inside out, pitting adorable bear soldiers against mythical unicorns in a brutal, absurd conflict. Beneath its candy-colored surface lies a satire about propaganda innocence and blind obedience. It's the kind of movie that makes you laugh nervously before realizing you're watching something painfully human. Director Alberto Vázquez, known for his surreal and disturbing animation style, uses watercolor textures and bright pastels to mask the horror. The story follows two bear brothers, Bluey, a cruel perfectionist obsessed with glory, and Tubby, his timid, loving counterpart. Their relationship mirrors countless real-world tales of divided loyalty and blind ambition. What begins as a fantasy war over a sacred forest becomes a nightmarish reflection on how hate spreads and how easily innocence can be twisted into cruelty. The film isn't subtle, and that's exactly why it works. The bright colors clash violently with the dark themes, forcing you to confront how war corrupts the very idea of childhood. Vázquez once said he wanted to make a mixture of Bambi and Apocalypse Now, and that description fits disturbingly well. By the end, you realize the unicorns aren't really monsters. They're victims of the same blind rage that drives every senseless conflict. Unicorn Wars is absurd, unsettling, and unforgettable. It proves that even a cartoon full of cuddly bears can say something brutally real about humanity's need to conquer. Number 9. Giovanni's Island, 2014. Sometimes the smallest islands carry the biggest heartbreak. Giovanni's Island is one of those films that sneaks up on you with beauty before hitting you with loss. Set in the shadow of Japan's surrender at the end of the Second World War, this story follows two brothers, Junpei and Kanta, living on a small island in northern Japan. Their peaceful life is shattered when foreign soldiers arrive, and everything familiar begins to disappear piece by piece. Unlike most war stories, this one unfolds through the eyes of children who don't understand why their world is changing. The brothers befriend a young girl from the occupying side, and for a brief moment, friendship blooms across the lines drawn by adults. But innocence can't hold back history forever. Soon, the brothers are swept up in the harsh new reality of displacement, hunger, and separation. The animation, produced by Production IG, is stunning, soft, hand-painted, and filled with melancholy light. Snow drifts gently across the screen, while trains whistle through dreams. It's visually poetic, like a picture book turning into a farewell letter. Composer Masashi Sada's haunting score amplifies the film's emotional pull without ever feeling manipulative. What makes Giovanni's Island unforgettable isn't the tragedy itself, but the way it honors memory. It's inspired by real post-war experiences from Japan's northern territories, giving voice to children who never got to tell their stories. By the end, the film quietly reminds you that war isn't just about nations. It's about the hearts left waiting on the shore. Gentle, devastating, and sincere, Giovanni's Island proves that even the softest strokes of animation can capture the weight of history. Number 8. In This Corner of the World, 2016. There's a certain kind of heartbreak that only animation can express, the quiet kind painted in watercolor pastels and gentle smiles. In This Corner of the World captures that perfectly. Set in Hiroshima and Kure during the Second World War, it tells the story of Suzu, a dreamy young woman whose world slowly collapses as the conflict closes in. But this isn't a movie about war heroes. It's about the ones who stay home and keep living anyway. Director Sunao Katabuchi creates a Japan rarely shown on screen, one filled with ordinary people trying to make ordinary meals while the world burns outside. Suzu's drawings and daydreams become her shield, a fragile attempt to hold on to normalcy as air raids grow closer. The animation's soft pencil lines and muted colors feel almost delicate enough to blow away, but that fragility becomes its power. It reminds you that beauty can exist even in ruin. When the inevitable devastation comes, it's not just tragic, it's deeply personal. You feel every loss, every empty space at the dinner table. Yet the film never gives in to despair. It's gentle, resilient, and achingly human. It doesn't shout about the cruelty of war. It simply lets you feel what's left behind when the shouting stops. In This Corner of the World proves that survival isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, like the scratch of a pencil or the hum of someone cooking rice for a family that may never return. It's one of the most quietly powerful animated films ever made. Number 7. The Deer King, 2021. The Deer King opens like a legend: wolves in the night, a broken empire, and one man carrying a child through the dark. Directed by Masashi Ando, a veteran of Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke, this Japanese animated epic blends fantasy and war with a beating human heart at its core. The story follows Van, a former soldier who escapes captivity during a deadly outbreak that sweeps through a land divided by conquest. When he rescues a young girl named Yuna, the two become unlikely companions, wanderers searching for peace in a world still poisoned by its past. Their bond becomes the emotional center of the film, a reminder that compassion can survive even in the ruins left by war. Visually, the film is breathtaking. Forests glow like old memories, mountains loom like silent witnesses, and every frame feels painted by hand. The animation softens the brutality, turning each scene into a meditation on loss and healing. While the battles and plague drive the story, The Deer King is really about endurance, how love in its quietest form can outlast the noise of history. Masashi Ando uses myth not to escape reality, but to reveal it. Beneath the wolves and legends lies a truth. The worst conflicts don't just scar the land, they scar the soul. Yet here, those scars become paths toward forgiveness. The Deer King doesn't end in triumph or tragedy, it ends in balance. It's a rare war film that doesn't glorify survival, but honors the grace it takes to keep living. Number 6. When the Wind Blows, 1986. If Grave of the Fireflies breaks your heart with youth, When the Wind Blows breaks it with age. This British animated film follows Jim and Hilda Bloggs, an elderly couple living in the English countryside who try to follow government leaflets on how to survive after a nuclear strike. They trust the system, they make tea, and they wait. What unfolds is one of the most quietly devastating depictions of human innocence ever animated. Director Jimmy Murakami and writer Raymond Briggs, who also created The Snowman, use a mix of hand-drawn characters and real-world backgrounds to make the story feel painfully believable. There's no epic score, no explosions, just two people trying to stay polite while the world outside turns to dust. Their naive optimism, Jim's belief that everything will be all right in the end, makes it all the more heartbreaking when you realize it won't. David Bowie contributed the theme song, and his voice lingers like a farewell. The film's message is simple but devastating. Ordinary people are the ones who always pay the price for decisions made far above their heads. The animation gives their suffering a strange beauty, softening the horror without ever denying it. When the Wind Blows may look gentle, but it hits harder than most live-action war dramas. It's not a story of battles or soldiers, it's a love story caught in the shadow of history. And sometimes that's the most haunting kind of war story there is. Number 5. Princess Mononoke, 1997. War doesn't always mean guns and generals. Sometimes it's fought between iron and earth, between greed and spirit. Princess Mononoke, directed by Hayao Miyazaki, turns that struggle into an animated epic that feels ancient and timeless all at once. It's a story where gods bleed forests, fight back, and one man finds himself caught between two worlds, neither right nor wrong, just painfully human. Set in medieval Japan, the film follows Ashitaka, a young prince cursed by a demon and exiled from his homeland. Seeking a cure, he discovers a land torn apart by conflict. On one side, Lady Eboshi, an industrial leader building, a city with iron and fire. On the other, San, a girl raised by wolves defending the forest spirits who see humanity as a plague. What unfolds is less about good versus evil and more about the tragic beauty of imbalance, how progress always seems to come at nature's expense. Visually, Princess Mononoke is a storm of motion, lush forests, breathing like living things, gods towering over battlefields, and creatures born of myth and rage. But beneath that spectacle lies an aching meditation on empathy. Every side believes it's doing what's right. Every character is both savior and destroyer. Miyazaki called it a war with no villains, and that's the secret to its power. The film doesn't teach you who to hate, it asks you who to understand. Even decades later, its message hits harder than ever. As the final embers fade and the forest begins to heal, you're left wondering, what kind of world are we still choosing to build? Princess Mononoke isn't just a war movie, it's a prayer for balance whispered through a storm. Number 4. The Wind Rises, 2013. When people think of war movies, they imagine soldiers on the ground. But The Wind Rises dares to look at the sky and the man who built it. Hayao Miyazaki's swan song tells the story of Jiro Horikoshi, the real-life engineer who designed the planes Japan used during the Second World War. Yet this isn't a film about battle. It's about dreams colliding with consequences. Jiro grows up obsessed with flight. He builds paper airplanes, studies aerodynamics, and dreams of touching the clouds. But as he grows, his passion becomes a double-edged sword. The same designs that bring him joy will later bring destruction. The film balances this paradox with grace. Miyazaki never condemns Jiro, but he doesn't absolve him either. It's a deeply human story about creativity existing in the shadow of catastrophe. The animation is breathtaking. Skies ripple like watercolor engines, hum with musical rhythm, and wind itself feels like a character. You can almost smell the oil and hear the metal sing. Yet the real engine of this film isn't machinery, it's love. Jiro's relationship with his ailing wife Naoko mirrors his obsession with creation. Both are fragile, fleeting, and beautiful. The Wind Rises ends not with triumph, but with reflection. Airplanes are beautiful dreams, Jiro says, but dreams come with a cost. It's a line that echoes beyond its final scene. War takes many forms. Sometimes it's built, not fought. And sometimes the hardest battles are the ones waged in a dreamer's heart. Number 3. Persepolis, 2007. Some wars are fought in the streets. Others are fought in the soul. Persepolis is the animated autobiography of Marjane Satrapi, a girl growing up amid revolution and repression in Iran. Told entirely in striking black and white, it's both personal diary and political statement, filtered through the sharp wit and raw honesty of a woman who refuses to be silenced. From childhood to adulthood, Marjane's world shifts like sand. She witnesses her family's hopes crumble under new oppression, watches her friends vanish, and learns that freedom isn't always where you expect to find it. Yet despite the heartbreak, Persepolis sparkles with humor and defiance. Marjane laughs rebels and questions everything. Even when the world tells her to shrink, she grows louder. The film's minimalist art style strips everything down to essence, just black-white and truth. That simplicity makes every frame feel like a confession. The stark contrasts echo the film's central theme: how one can live between extremes, tradition and modernity, belonging and exile, pride and pain. When Persepolis premiered at Cannes, critics hailed it as a new kind of war story, one told from inside a living memory, not through soldiers, but through survivors. It isn't about battles, it's about identity under siege. By the end, you realize it's not a story about losing a homeland, it's about learning to carry it inside you. Persepolis stands as proof that animation isn't just for fantasy. It can speak the language of truth more powerfully than reality itself. Number 2, Barefoot Gen, 1983. There are films that make you cry, and then there's Barefoot Gen, which leaves you silent. Adapted from Keiji Nakazawa's semi-autobiographical manga, it's one of the earliest and most visceral depictions of the Hiroshima bombing and its aftermath. Unlike many historical dramas, this one doesn't look away. It makes you stand right there next to a child who loses everything in a flash of white light. Gen is a cheerful boy, full of life, who loves his family and dreams big. But when the bomb falls, his entire world turns to ash. What follows isn't spectacle, it's survival. The animation may look dated by modern standards, but its sincerity cuts through time. The style's simplicity makes the horror even more striking. There's no music to soften it, no clever editing to hide it, just raw human pain. Nakazawa himself was a survivor, and every frame feels like testimony. Yet amid the darkness, there's defiance. Gen doesn't surrender to despair. He digs, he rebuilds, he carries on. It's the purest definition of resilience. This isn't just a movie about a tragedy, it's a record of endurance, one that demands to be remembered. While Grave of the Fireflies often gets the spotlight, Barefoot Gen walked there first. It gave animation permission to deal with the unthinkable. Decades later, it still stands as one of the most important anti-war films ever made, not for its politics, but for its humanity. It reminds us that history isn't made of dates and numbers, it's made of people who lived, suffered, and kept going barefoot through the ruins. Number 1. Grave of the Fireflies, 1988. If cinema had a heart, this film would break it. Grave of the Fireflies, directed by Isao Takahata, is not just an animated masterpiece, it's one of the most powerful war stories ever told. It begins with two siblings, Seita and Setsuko, trying to survive after the firebombing of Kobe during the final months of the Second World War. But calling it a war movie feels too small. This is a story about love loss and the quiet destruction of innocence. From the opening scene, we know the ending. Seita's spirit watches over his little sister's lifeless body. The rest of the film unfolds in flashback, tracing their desperate attempts to find food safety and hope in a collapsing world. There are no villains, no grand speeches, just two children against the indifferent machinery of war. Takahata crafts every frame like a watercolor elegy. Fireflies glow in the dark, symbolizing both beauty and impermanence. The soft hand-drawn style amplifies the heartbreak because it looks gentle, too gentle for the horrors it portrays. The animation lures you in, then devastates you. Critics have called it the most beautiful movie you'll never want to watch again, and that's true. It hurts to witness. But that's what makes it essential. It's not about shock, it's about empathy. It reminds us that behind every headline or statistic, there's a child who just wanted candy, a family who just wanted dinner. Grave of the Fireflies isn't simply the best animated war movie, it's one of the most important films ever made. It doesn't preach, it simply asks you to feel, and once you do, you'll never forget it. Animation can do what live action rarely dares. It lets us see the unspeakable through art, not spectacle. These 10 films prove that even drawn lines can leave scars on the heart. Which one spoke to you the most? Tell us in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more cinematic deep dives. Because sometimes the quietest stories about war are the ones that never stop echoing.